Hello, this is the morning garden. I'm just getting used to this thing. Yesterday, I was talking to some of you. I had to deliver the grapevine plant to a good friend. Got that done. There was karaoke going on at that location, sang one song. I got a good reaction. Um, but the plant is when I got up this morning, I kept thinking about the plant because she mentioned how do you plant this particular plant. And I told her that it's basically easy. One thing you don't want to do, I said, is fertilize it right off the jump because adding organic or inorganic fertilizers to that particular area where you're planting them at, it makes the roots stay there longer so that they can soak in the nutrients. But what you really want is for the plant to go out searching uh, for food. Once it gets familiar with its new environment, you want it to go out. You don't want it to stay there. So that being said, uh, just plant it out, water it in. Once it starts to grow, then you may want to add some very uh, half strength sort of fertilizer. Like if I was to add fertilizer to it was a liquid, say fish emulsion, I would add very little to it, and I would cut that strength in half, and then I would water it in, and let it have something to eat that's relatively easy to find, and then once it gets its strength up, it'll go out and look around and search for its own food. Planting things in the summer and is a little bit more trying because you got the stress of the plant being moved, and then you have also the stress of the heat. So what you want to do is you want to keep taking your finger and poke it in the soil to about right here. And what will happen is once you feel the moisture, then you know that you don't have to water it. If you feel dry, completely dry or dry, then you want to go ahead and give it some water. Best time, best time on earth to water any of your plants is to water them in the early morning hours. It's just better that way. You don't water them in the heat because the heat and the water can actually cause damage to your plants, kind of like boiling them in a sense. Um, so that's something you got to keep in mind. And also remember that being, a gardener or a farmer, the quality of water that you add to your plant is very essential, and it's important to get the best quality you can. Now, if all you have is city water that comes through a pipe, then that's what you have. It is not by any means the best soil or best water to add. It is not. The best water to add to your garden or your farm, if you have it on hand, is rainwater. Rainwater, water from a pond, fresh water pumped out of the ground, best water to go with. It is the best. City water, that's if you can't get a hold of anything else. Um, so my water drums, which is a rain barrel, and there's tons of videos online on how to make them, and they can save you a ton of money on water throughout the growing seasons. Tons of money. So what I do is I simply uh, I built up the rain barrels. I put them in place. First, I judged how much water do you need. First, I thought I need 200 gallons. It was a lot more work, and when good to see you too. Got good to see you. Someone's watching, folks. But what happened is when I put the barrel system together, and I use what they call a manifold system, and I bought the lowest cost way of tying them into my gutter system, where the water would come through that line, and once the drums are full, it would cut it off and run it the way it would normally run. And so I didn't have to spend $150 in tying that into the barrels. I found a simpler way of doing it. I didn't have to drill any holes in my barrels that relate to having it run over, and then have big holes in the top for mosquitoes to get into the drums. No mosquito, and I guarantee it can get into any of my drums that I built up, because that was important to me, because I already have enough mosquitoes on my property to deal with. Um, the water actually keeps the plants healthy. The rainwater also allows the plants to grow better. So that cuts costs when it comes to gardening. If you're going to spend a lot of money in gardening, it's just not worth doing it. That's just my opinion. If you're going to spend a lot of money, especially to eat from, it's just not worth it. If you're going to spend a ton of money, because you might as well go to the grocery store and get some of that poison food they serve. If you're going to do it, I mean, because the whole key to gardening is to grow the best food. It is to grow the healthiest food, and the way to do that is to have clean soil, also to have clean water, and to save costs. Your neighbors can help you out with your gardening and not even know they're doing it. A good example, I always talk about this. They throw away leaves in the fall. People go out, they purchase plastic bags or paper bags, and they pile all these leaves in a bag, and they set them near the curb for people to get them. I once found a neighbor that had 40 some odd bags outside. When I drove by in my hoopty, I couldn't resist. I stopped, and when I stopped over, I had to grab these bags. I took 40 bags home at night. Well, being a person of African descent in the middle of the night grabbing bags, not a good idea. But I did it, and I was able to make it work. But I would like for you to, get permission from your neighbors and go ahead and grab those bags and take them home. And when you get those bags home, you have nothing but black gold to add to your garden. All you're actually picking up, if you want to break it all the way down, is you're picking up topsoil. And that's what it turns back into. Now, here's the great thing about leaves and why you should use leaves. The roots of a tree go down deep into the soil, sometimes 7, 10 feet. They go down. They anchor themselves. They pull up all these minerals. And those minerals go through that tree's trunk, out through those branches, and into what? Those leaves. Minerals that you normally couldn't get to, but they can. Now, once that takes place, you load up your plants with rich minerals. And that's what you want to do. And it's free, absolutely free. You got the trucks riding around, cutting up trees all over the place. I pulled them over and said, "Excuse me." I stopped them in the middle of where they were working and said, "Excuse me, what are you going to do with all these wood chips?" And he said, "You want?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "I am actually 3 blocks from here." And he said, "Okay." He followed me in this massive truck. I got him to my property, and I had to move one car out of the driveway. He dumped in the driveway, and I saw half of my driveway disappear. He had over 10,000 pounds of wood chips. Now, I wouldn't recommend this for anyone that's not really that healthy to try to move these. I had to move these from that location where he dumped them at into my garden area. And then I drove back through that area, coming back from Walmart. He had another truckload. And you know what I did, because I'm a little crazy at times. I said, "What are you going to do with those?" He said, "I'll follow you." He knew what I wanted. We went back to my property. He backed that massive truck back up into my yard. And I watched him when he poured that load. There was no more driveway. It was gone. It was underneath 20,000 pounds of wood chips. Now, there was no place to park my car. So for 3 weeks, I worked every day to at least open up the what they call it, the driveway. It took 3 weeks to open up the driveway. Load at a time with a tractor. So not a good idea. Have them to pour it in a place where you know you're going to be using it right from that spot, and you can use it whenever you can move it whenever you feel like moving it. I was in a rush because where they poured it at, if the city would have kept driving by seeing that pile there, they would have said, okay, we're writing him up. We're going to write him up. He's going to pay fines until he move it. So that wasn't a good idea. But I worked, got it done. Had one, two, three. Had 3 neighbors after I got the pile knocked all the way down. They came over and helped me out. I said, look, take some of this to your yard for your garden. And they said, okay. And they worked for over 2 hours, and they had enough for their yard. And then the rest of it went towards my yard. And I had all these wood chips over almost a fifth of an acre in the back. It was small, but I covered it. And I was walking on 9 inches throughout of just wood chips. So, I had my garden all set. Winter came and gone, and then in the spring, my soil was wet. It had all these wood chips over. I had to dig down 8 inches, 9 inches in some spots to put my plants in, and the soil was hard as a rock because that's the soil I had at the time. It was a hard clay, and that put the plants in. They barely grew that year. I kept watching these videos on how to, deal with these wood chips, and all it said was it takes 3 to 4 years for this stuff to break down. I watched my soil go from hard clay to a loomy soil, but it took a year and a half. I had all these worms everywhere, and some kind of weird worm that wiggles real fast. These I call it Alabama jumper, and they were everywhere. I mean, you could handle them; they would break off. You could deal with them. They were fast. I said I could use these as worms for my fishing, and they move like snakes. I was wondering what is this? Some of you might know actually what that is, type of worm that was. As the food supply diminished from 9 inches to 4 inches to 2 inches, the worms disappeared as well. But I still have in my soil now is all black, loose, loomy soil. Everything grows well, including the weeds. So once this happened, I said, now I can't keep bringing in these wood chips like this. This is crazy. So what can I do? And I started watching videos on chop and drop. And when I started using chop and drop, I was sold. I was sold because I was chopping off these weeds and laying them down sideways, pulling them up from the root, laying them down sideways. All my debris that would grow from my corn and from my okra and for anything, tomatoes, anything, I would leave it there and let it just rot in the winter. And I saw these big pieces of wood, and I would pull them up, and all these big sets of roots. And I would study the roots, and the roots were huge, and they were white and pretty and healthy. And I said, something is going on here in this soil. When you're pulling up plants that have root structures that are that big and that thick, and so the plants were growing well. And I kept laying all this debris on top. I kept cutting it down with the weed whacker, cutting it down with the tractor. And all these weeds were being cut. And then I noticed something. They were doing the same job, if not better, than the wood chips were doing. They were doing the same job, but they were pulling up all these minerals from deep in the soil. Because some of these weeds you could never pull up. You can always tell a weed that has a deep tap root when you can never pull it up from its root. You only can break it off, and you would lay it down, and all those minerals from that particular plant goes into your soil, and it creates this beautiful loomy soil in the spring. I'm telling you, it's well worth using your weeds. I did a video. You can go and look at it if you have time, and you'll see it. It says giving your weeds a job. And then I got some older videos that tell you look at it. You'll see me pulling down all these weeds. You see me chopping them with the weed whacker, and I just leave them there, and they break down, and you see all this brown, look like hay on the surface, and all it is weeds that 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 are doing the job. Now I got tomatoes in my yard growing. I have tomatoes. I have other things, but I have a squash and and you should see how my kiwi are growing. My kiwi has all natural ingredients around the roots. I pull weeds up, and I load them up around the plant, 4 to 6 inches deep, and they break down. And when you go back in another 2 3 weeks, you can't even see the weeds. All you see is this black soil that the weeds created because the microorganisms eat the weeds and excrete their waste, and also they live and party and die right there. And all of this goes to your plant's food source. Now, when it rains, it creates this tea and it just pours right into the ground. And that tea coming from those microorganisms, your plant's best friend, your plant's best food is from that source. And I want to just let all of you know that it is the best way to do it. It is the best way to do it. Now, oh, look at all of you tuning in here. I appreciate that. Thank each and every one of you. I appreciate that. I love talking about this garden thing. I love everything about gardening. I love just the fact of going and looking at my plants. And what makes me happy when I go out into my garden, I see absolutely healthy plants. And I also been showing you a lot of videos. You can go check out the last 2 videos of mine. And I'm talking mainly about how I have these weeds in my yard, and I have the plants growing in between these weeds, and they're healthy plants. And they have no, or if any, very little, you have to look for bug bites on my plants because you can't find them. And it's just a great thing. And I used to think when I watch videos, I see people say, "Oh, the bugs are eating my plants up. The bugs are doing this." The bug, I have to get some soap and tea and things, some things that keep these bugs off my plants. I found out bugs are attracted to plants that are stressed out, plants that are getting ready to die, plants that are starving, plants that are not getting proper watering or proper care. Those plants are the ones that bugs look for. And they are the cleanup crew in nature. And their job is to clean out the plants that are no longer viable. They keep the plant community strong by taking out the weak ones. If your plants are weak, the bugs are eating them. If your plants are starving, the bugs are eating them. Because bugs won't eat up a bunch of healthy plants. So while I'm growing all these weeds around my plants, those weeds are a buffet to these bugs. They're eating all the weeds. They're not touching my stuff. They're not touching it. My corn right now in my yard, there's no bites on them at all. This is the Morning Gardener Show. Thanking each and every one of you for tuning in. God.